Star Wars movies. Everybody knows what Star Wars is. Most people have seen Star Wars. People who claim they don't like Star Wars haven't even watched Star Wars. I'm saying Star Wars a lot. That's just how it is. I'm going to be doing all Star Wars movies. So that is the prequel trilogy, the original trilogy, sequel trilogy, the controversial one, and I'm also going to be including Rogue One and Solo as well, because, you know, they're movies, and to be honest, they're better than the actual sequel trilogy. You know, spoiler, but that's just how I feel about it. But yeah, let me know what you think. This tier list is basically just on how good I think they are, and, you know, I might make a lot of people mad, is what it is. But this is the thing, you know, let me tell you this. I have a lot to say about these movies, and I will not let anybody tell me otherwise. But without further ado, let's do this. Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. Okay, so this is definitely, at least at the time, a very big letdown for people. I wasn't alive, you know, when this movie came out. So, yeah, I'm a bit on the younger side. But as a younger person who grew up watching it, I thought it was very boring, you know, at the time at least. And the thing is, with the sequels coming out, people have gone back, you know, they're saying that they're redeemed the prequels just because they think that these prequels are better than the sequels. Just because the sequels are probably worse than the prequels overall, right? No, not probably, they are worse than the prequels overall, at least in my opinion, right? I can't call Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones good just because of that. Like, you know? But in the case of the Phantom Menace, I actually don't think it's as boring as people say it is. I'm kind of, you know, being oxymoronic because I'm just contradicting myself in a way. But when I first saw it, I thought it was pretty boring. I saw it again somewhat recently, and I thought it was alright. But that's just because I really love the world of Star Wars, you know? That movie's carried by that, you know? Because I love Darth Maul, I love Anakin, I love Obi-Wan, I love, you know, I love these characters. Every character has something about them, a lore. Like, Tatooine is a character. That planet that Anakin's from is basically a character in of itself, you know? At least to me. And being in this world, it's just fun, you know? Seeing, like, a young Anakin just interacting with, you know, his brother figure, Obi-Wan, and, you know, the guy, you know, the duel of the fates, you know, who should have been his, you know, true father figure, Qui-Gon, but, you know, we all see what happens to him there. But in terms of why I'd rank it, the film is quite boring, you know, and everybody kind of feels the same. The only ones that don't feel the same, you know, the ones who don't feel sort of like the same character are Anakin and Jar Jar. And the thing that people don't like about this film the most is Jar Jar. But when I saw it, I thought it was a bit annoying, but, you know, he was making it better for me in a way, because he was making everybody sort of look really dull in comparison, and he was sort of just making everything a bit more uplifting, if that makes sense. I was really into the stuff with, like, the midichlorian count, you know, finding out that Anakin has the most midichlorians out of any Force-sensitive person ever, you know, including Yoda himself, which is just a really cool nod to go through. I don't like how they killed Darth Maul in the first movie, you know. They brought him back in Clone Wars, but obviously, you know, this is not about the shows. I might do that at some point. I might include the shows in a separate one, or just, you know, we'll just see how it goes. But where I'd rank it, yeah, so it's not a perfect film, because it does struggle to, it's not even that I find it that boring, it's just that I do find that it's not paced very well. Not because I'm not interested, just because I just don't think it's paced very well. And for that, before a few years ago, I think I would have given it a C. I think I might give it a B now. Yeah. The thing is, I feel like as I go along, it might change, you know? I feel like a B is also probably might be a bit of a hot take, but I actually don't think it's that bad, you know? Attack of the Clones. Okay, so this is a movie that I can't, for the life of me, say is good, no matter what day of the week it is. You know, I can't. The Phantom Menace I could go back on, you know, it has rubbed up, you know, it has warmed up a bit on me, but this one I can never go back and say, yeah, this one is just good, because it's just not. The introduction of the clones is also pretty interesting, but that's just because of the Clone Wars show making the prequels better. I'm telling you right now, these movies wouldn't be as good if it wasn't for Clone Wars, the show, you know? It just wouldn't be as good. And in the case of the Attack of the Clones, I can't, even though now that I'm used to the dialogue, I still go back watching Attack of the Clones and thinking it's just not good. You know, I can't go back and watch Attack of the Clones and think that dialogue is good. Revenge of the Sith, I've gotten used to. I've gotten used to that dialogue, right? I can still go back and say it's not good, But I'm used to it now, and I've accepted it, and it's just not as cringeworthy as it was before for me. But Attack of the Clones, I can't. Every time I watch that film, I can't listen to Anakin and say, the thought without you not being with you. I can't breathe. I can't. And for that reason, the things I do like in it are, I like Anakin meeting his family, you know? Going back to Tatooine after all this time and people just finding out who he is. You know, Watto saying, oh, Annie, little Annie? You know, because he's like, oh, it's you, you know, you were my slave, you're not anymore. Oh, you're a Jedi now, crazy. And he meets his, you know, in-laws, or his stepbrother and stepdad, and all that. And that was cool. But when he finds his mum, that was pretty sad, you know, especially since that, if you watch the first film especially, and just even if you don't watch that film and you just see him with his mum in general, you know, that's always a decent way just to make you care just a little bit. So there is a bit of redeeming stuff here, and the characters actually have traits now. You find out that Obi-Wan doesn't like flying, you know. Jango Fett is the one that, you know, is the clone template. He is the original template. Count Dooku, there's a lot of lore behind it that we find out before and during the Phantom Menace, and even after Darth Maul dies, that whatever they've all done post then, and that was pretty cool to see. It's a shame we couldn't see any of that, but I guess it is cooler that we don't actually see it in a way. But the stuff that isn't great about it, I just can't get past because it's just so weird. It doesn't make any sense, you know. The fact that Dooku, the Emperor, Palpatine didn't want to do something, Dooku didn't want to do something, Jango didn't want to do something, so they all just hire a different person after that to kill someone, to kill Padme, even though they just all could have done it themselves. And then, when the Jedi leave Anakin and Obi-Wan to chase the shapeshifter, the one that Jango hired, Jango could have gone back, or Dooku could have gone back, or the Emperor could have gone back and just killed Padme by themselves, but they just didn't choose to do it for some reason. So, you know, there's just all these things, but it just makes you think, why didn't they do this instead, you know? And it keeps happening. It doesn't stop. Every other scene you make, it makes you think that. And for that reason, I think I got to give it a C. Revenge of the Sith. Okay. I actually saw these films before seeing Clone Wars. Well, actually, no, that's not like. The first Star Wars thing I ever saw was Clone Wars, as in just like a couple scenes here or there, but I didn't actually watch the show. Seeing how Anakin was in that show, and then seeing him how he is in this film, or just this trilogy, I was so surprised, you know, because he's so much different in that show than he is here. And that was something that kind of baffled me at first. I was like, is this the same character? Because why is he acting so different here? And I was thinking, oh, did the movies come after the show? But no, you find out the movies come out first, and then you think, well, why did they make him so different? And everybody else is kind of the same, you know, except for Anakin. But that's just because people didn't like Anakin as a character at the time. But when I look back at it, when I watch Revenge of the Sith, I don't see why he's seen as unlikable, you know? If anything, I find him the most likable in this film out of all of them. Because I watched this film, even without watching Clone Wars. Clone Wars makes this movie so much better, right? I still like it on its own, but the show makes it so much better, right? But the thing is, I find it hard not to feel bad for Anakin in this movie, you know? Because he is constantly just getting gaslit the entire film. You know, he feels any sort of emotion, and then he's told that he's wrong for feeling it. Obviously, he's going to crash out at some point, you know? When he went to kill the kids and whatever, you know, the younglings or whatever, okay, maybe he went a bit too far, right? Maybe just, you know. But him turning on everyone, being mad at everyone, is totally justified to me. Because he's constantly just getting let down by everyone. And you find out in the show as well that he's constantly just getting lied to, you know. And then it's just slowly building his resentment towards it. And even with his own Padawan in the show, Ahsoka, he tries to be a good example for her, even though he himself at that point already hates the Council, the Jedi Council and everything about them. He believes in their duty and all that, you know. But he doesn't like them, which I don't blame him for, including me. And I just really like this. And the thing is, the things that don't, you know, make it perfect are the dialogue again. His arc is a bit rushed for me. You know, it just feels like we go from his start as a kid to his start as a Padawan, or the end of him being a Padawan, and then just him, the finale of him being a Jedi Knight, you know? So we don't see his turn, because his arc throughout every film doesn't really connect in a way. Like, his conflict in Attack of the Clones doesn't really connect to Revenge of the Sith, but I've seen Clone Wars, so I'm going to see it with that mindset. So it makes the movie better, you know? But in terms of where I'd rank it, it has some of the best stuff, you know? the best fight, the best music, you know, things like that. So it's hard not to see it as good, at least to me. So I think for that, I think I'm gonna go S tier. Yeah. The movie is just great to me because it tugs on all the heartstrings, you know? And it also, and if you watch everything before then end with Return of the Jedi is just so much better as well as a result. You know what I'm going to do from now on, actually? I'm going to actually just rank them first, then give my thoughts later. How about that? Okay. A New Hope. Okay, so that title is also just something I am not the biggest fan of. I think you should have just left it as Star Wars, you know? People aren't stupid. They can just figure out themselves. Like, calling it Episode 4 New Hope is just not for me, at least, you know. People can figure out for themselves, you know? But in terms of the film, I'm gonna go. I have never seen the original cut that came out in 1977. I've only seen the fully edited, altered one. So, yeah. When I first saw this film, I was thinking, this film isn't that good. It's so boring. But then I found out that, oh, it's because it's been so digitally altered and they've added scenes and all that. Like with Han and, what's his name? Jabba the Hutt. That scene was never in the original, by the way. I don't know why they included that scene, and that really killed the pacing for me. It just doesn't need to exist. But I'm just going to go through the stuff that I think is good and all that. It's really cool just to see, you know, like a young guy trying to, you know, find his way in the world or find out about himself and what he wants to do, and he just gets the help that he needs from like the old wise wizard and all that. So it is a cool movie, you know, and at the time it must have blown people's minds away because I can't see it being anything other than good, at least at the time. But even now I can watch it and think the music is incredible. You know, Han, Luke and Leia as a trio are very likable, and Chewbacca as well with them, even though he's basically Han Solo's pet in those movies, you know, in the original trilogy, even though he's basically just like, he is a sentient being with, you know, emotions and intelligence and all that, and his own motivations and all that, which is something I'm not going to excuse the film for it, but it's just something funny to acknowledge. But in terms of where I'd rank it, it is good. I think these movies have aged a bit, you know. I think nostalgia really helps a lot, but I don't think A New Hope is... I'm watching it, I'm thinking of it with the mindset of when I saw it last and as its altered version. If I saw the original version, I'd probably think of it differently. It might go up in S tier for me, but right now I'm gonna go A tier. Also, I just forgot I didn't actually rank it first. Sorry, I'm gonna do that, and I'm actually gonna do that now from now on. Okay, Empire Strikes Back. Okay, you know where it's going. Yeah, you know where it's going. Arguably the best Star Wars movie ever made. Even as someone who grew up knowing who Darth Vader was, Anakin Skywalker, I can't deny that this is a fun time. You know, it's just hard not to like this movie. The first half an hour is pretty slow, I will admit, you know, but it is a lot of fun because it keeps picking up. It just keeps going, you know, and you find out that you feel that the Empire is quite a major threat for our heroes, for the rebels, and everything's dire, and everything seems to be going well. They seem to find a way out, and they just get in trouble, all of them. In the first introduction of Yoda as well. I don't know who's more recognizable in Star Wars. Is it Darth Vader or is it Yoda? Or Stormtroopers? You think it's Yoda, but I think it is probably Darth Vader just because of, you know, he came out a bit before. Bring back Puppet Yoda, that would be pretty cool. But in terms of Star Wars Empire Strikes Back, there's not actually a lot I can say about it that's, you know, sort of making me think it's bad or good. It's just good, you know? Because you find out that Luke wants to put in the work as a Jedi, but... No, other way around. He wants to be a Jedi, but he doesn't want to put in the work, you know, and he's constantly told that he has to put in the work if he wants to be a successful Jedi. He wants to do all these things. He wants to, you know, help bring balance because that is his goal. At least that's what people think that his destiny is, and not Anakin's anymore, even though it is still Anakin's. And then you find out that the guy we all hate... Imagine being in the cinema, right, watching that film, and finding out the guy you all hate is the guy who... is the dad. Yeah, that would blow my mind as well, I think, if I was there at the time. But even if you know the twist, it's still a good film. And that is why I think it's not as good as Revenge of the Sith for me, because it fully relies on you knowing what Star Wars is and everything, so it takes that and then just goes crazy with it. Return of the Jedi. Okay. For a little while, when I saw these movies years ago, I actually thought Return of the Jedi was my favorite, or at least I felt it was. out of the originals at least, because of that finale, you know, that last like half an hour, 40 minutes or whatever. Because that last third is really good, you know. And that's the only Star Wars movie I've watched that makes me tear up. That has made me tear up. Is the only one. Because everything that comes before it, chronologically, just builds it up into this epic finale, you know? Despite the, you know, Care Bears subplot, Care Bears, what do you call them? Oh, I'm blanking. What do you call them? Ewoks, there we go. Yeah, even though they're there, it's still a fun ride, and I didn't find them that annoying, to be honest. I'm not, you know, for some reason, what annoys other people doesn't annoy me, and what annoys me tends to not annoy other people. I don't know. That's why I feel like a bit of a contrarian in that way. But I like the film a lot. You know, when he finally changes, when he finally turns Darth Vader back into Anakin, that was really, really emotional. And Luke, you know, realizing his role and him trying to... Again, this is actually quite similar. I've noticed something. The difference between Anakin and Luke is that Anakin took that pain and then turned, you know? All that manipulation of sort of everybody trying to tell him what to do and what not to do. Whereas Luke takes everything, takes all that pain, right? Or just, you know, everybody telling him what he needs to do to save everyone. He needs to kill his dad. And he's constantly going against everyone. Because now he's a fully fledged Jedi Knight, and now he can think for himself, or he was in the past, but now he's fully confident with himself, and he's doing everything he wants to do to save everybody he can, including his own dad, including his own father, which I respect, because he just didn't need to do any of those things. You know, he could have just killed Darth Vader, killed the Emperor, and that was it. But I guess then he'd be tempted by the dark side and all that. Oh, also, I found out that Luke was actually more tempted by the dark side than Anakin ever was, actually. In terms of raw emotion, Luke was more tempted than Anakin, which I thought was pretty funny. Oh my god, I forgot again. I have to rank it at the start. Oh my god. All right. Hey, Force Awakens. Okay. I actually wasn't that into Star Wars until somewhat recently. I got into Star Wars when I was back in like 2018. So I wasn't, you know, I was past like the Last Jedi, Force Awakens hype, or decline, maybe, I guess you could put it. But Star Wars Force Awakens itself is a pretty decent movie on its own. It's just made worse by the ones that came after it. And the thing is, people would look back at this film, because it came out 10 years ago now, people would look back at this and think this is the most hyped they've ever been for Star Wars. Period, you know? And I look back at this movie and I think, again, it's decent, you know? I think it gets pretty cringeworthy if you keep rewatching it. Like, if you watch it the first time, it's okay. If you watch the second time, it's okay. You know, then it just gets worse and worse and worse, at least to me. But I haven't watched it much recently. It's pretty hype because you find out about these new characters and whatever. You find out about Kylo Ren, and you find out that he's a complete man-child. But he's also a man-child who's fully trained with the lightsabers. So it makes him pretty, you know, menacing and serious, I guess you could say, when he wants to be. But his fight against Rey is a bit makes me a bit on the fence, because I don't think he should have won that if he was in full health, he would totally beat Rey, I feel. You know, Rey and Finn at the same time, but he wasn't. He was shot by Chewbacca after he killed Han by a Wookiee bowcaster, right? And we've seen throughout the film, whenever he kills someone with the bowcaster, that it's just a one shot, right? So if anything, it would make more logical sense that if he shot Kylo Ren, it would kill him instantly, you know? So then, for him to lose against Rey, who has already been shown to be proficient to fight, you know, with a stick and all that, or just with anything, it actually makes sense to me why he loses, at least to me. And that's what I'm going to stand by, you know, because everybody says that, oh, he should have won or whatever. Yeah, he should win in a fair fight, but it wasn't a fair fight. You know what? I think I might just go back to not ranking it immediately because I keep forgetting to. So, but in terms of why I'd rank it, it's just, I think before Last Jedi came out, it would have gone an A, but I just don't think it holds up that much. Oh no, yeah, you know what? I think I'm gonna give it B though. Yeah, because it's not bad. It's okay. You know, it's decent. Okay, this one, Rogue One. Very interesting story. I really like the concept of, you know, before the first ever Star Wars movie, how that takes place, and it actually makes A New Hope even better, surprisingly, if you can believe that. But the problem with the film is that the characters are just so boring. Except Andor. But that's just because the TV show has made him so much more likable, so much better. So, yeah. Andor show makes it so much better because you actually care about Andor now. And we find out at the end of that show that he's literally just going to where Rogue One starts. I just find that so crazy, in a good way, because it just elevates that whole series now, that whole film, and just turns it into something far much more better because you now actually care about a character you're watching. And it works as well because you find out throughout the show that it kind of builds up to him being this character. You find out why does he spare Jyn Erso's dad. But then you find out in the show that he would be tempted to save everyone in the best way he can, but he would go back, he would take a step back and, rethink. And in terms of the film itself, it is a sad ending. Even if you don't care about the characters, it is a sad ending. And Darth Vader himself, is just a complete menace in this film. Like, every other day I see on Twitter, you just scroll through my For You page, and you just see Vader, Vader might have the most aura in all of Star Wars, if I'm being honest, because my man's breathing terrifies, anybody. How does that... His medical condition is scary. So, yeah. And I'd rank it... yeah, I think I'd give it an A. Because I think before Andor, I would have given it a B. But post Andor, I'm giving it an A. It makes it go up from it goes up from, I think, a 6, 7 out of 10 to like an 8, 7, 8 out of 10 now for me. Yeah. Last Jedi. Okay. I don't really see Luke Skywalker ever turning the way he did. I just don't think it's really a possibility for this character who is so optimistic to a point where you can bottle his optimism and give it to somebody else type thing. Like, he has unlimited optimism. He is that character that is just, he can't be changed. He is too stubborn in his values. So for him to change this much, you would need to write it really well, at least in my opinion. You have to make it believable. And unfortunately, this movie just doesn't do that, It turns him into, like, the optimistic, heroic, people-pleasing. And I say people-pleasing, I mean in a good way, like very sort of just noble and charismatic person into the most cynical, downrodden, down bad character of all time, He just loses faith in everything. And I just don't like how in the sequel trilogy, Luke goes back to what the Jedi were pre-Order 66, Like, you can't marry, you can't, do any of these things, you can't form attachments and all that. I'm thinking, why isn't he like how he is in the books, when he takes all that stuff from the past, things that didn't work, and then changes it, into a more healthy, dynamic environment. But he doesn't do that, which I don't like. I wish they went a different route. If they went that route, and then whatever happened in Last Jedi, with the temple being taken down and all that, then it would have been more believable and more tragic again. In my opinion, it would have made it sadder in a good way, making the audience feel bad. And I just don't like how they make Finn go through the same character arc again. Like, he learns in The Force Awakens to fight for someone other than himself and do the right thing. And then in this movie, he finds out more about himself, think less about himself, think more about others, and do the right thing. So he's basically the same character, And Finn, he doesn't change, I don't think. He's basically the same person, right? One thing I do like is how Finn and Rey meet at the end. It's like, oh yeah, they haven't even met yet. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But the film's quite boring. I think it's just a nothing burger. It treats all these characters kind of in a cynical way, where it makes you go, okay, yeah, these characters. Let's put them in a world. Let's put them in, a room together. And we'll just do whatever we want, We'll make it the most sad. We'll make it the most baseless, boring, least spectacle, the least spectacle film you will ever see. Whereas Revenge of the Sith kind of takes everything and makes it into a spectacle, makes it into hype. And Last Jedi shouldn't do that, because you're seeing Luke Skywalker for the first time in years, decades. But it just takes all of that and doesn't do anything with it in a way that's very satisfying. Him dying at the end was just, it didn't hit for me. You know, it was very nothing. I just didn't feel anything. The things that I like about it, I do like that Kylo Ren kind of now takes everything and then decides to become the main villain. I thought that was pretty cool. I was like, oh, he could finally be the main villain, and hopefully he can. But then in a way, it just made me think, oh, but I just don't see this guy actually beating Rey anymore. Because despite the first film, when I said, oh, I gave him props, you know, it was okay that he lost the fight because he was very badly injured and all that. If he wasn't, he would easily beat Rey. You know? I just still see it as like I just don't. Because Rey is shown to be very proficient on her own. She's beating all these guards on her own. So of course she's going to beat Kylo Ren now because, you know, plot and all that. So I just didn't feel like that was going to be a necessary thing. But in terms of where I'd rank it, I don't like the film that much. I haven't seen it in a long time, so it could be, my opinion could be swayed. But even Luke's face in the Last Jedi poster, it's just not. It doesn't look like Luke Skywalker. You know, it doesn't look like someone. It doesn't look like how he would end up. He does change in the end. He does, you know, become more optimistic and less pessimistic. Accepts his role as a Jedi and all that. The Last Jedi, but it's just not. It doesn't hit, man. Solo, a Star Wars story. Okay, I think this one is overhated to shit. I don't understand why people don't like this movie more. This is probably my favorite out of all of Disney Star Wars. I am not gonna lie. I know a lot of people say Rogue One. Some might even say Force Awakens. But for me, it's this one. This one right here. I don't get it. I just don't get why people don't like it more. It is so faithful to Han's character. I can fully see a younger Han, you know, in like his early 20s or whatever, being like this. Early mid-20s being like this. It makes complete sense for this character, you know? And the actor who plays him, he's not doing a full-on impression of Harrison Ford, you know? At least that's what I think. The only thing that looks similar is the hair. Apart from that, they don't even look that much alike. You know, he's capturing sort of the demeanor of Harrison Ford. You know, the essence of that character, or on Han Solo from the original trilogy. Whereas, what's his name? Childish Gambino, Donald Glover, whatever. He is fine, but it feels like he's trying to make himself act and sound like the actor who played Lando in The Empire Strikes Back, 1-for-1, you know, which doesn't work for me because he has a really deep voice in that movie, and Donald Glover just doesn't, you know. So him trying to sound like Lando in The Empire Strikes Back just doesn't make any sense because it feels like they would say two completely different lines, and it feels like he's trying to act like he sounds like it, but he just doesn't. But I really like, what's his name, Aldrin Ehrenreich, I hope I said his name right, but he's really good as Han, and it's a shame we'll just never probably see him again, even though it's probably only meant to be like a one-time thing. But I think this movie was kind of doomed from the start because no one really wanted this movie to begin with, you know? Because Han didn't really need a movie, he didn't really need a prequel, and one thing I really love about this movie is that Han and Chewbacca have a conversation. Tell me another time these two characters actually have a heart-to-heart, one-on-one convo with each other aside from this movie. I can't, because he just, like I said previously a few minutes ago, that he basically treats him like his pet throughout all those movies. But this one, he actually treats him like a person, and they actually feel like bros in a way. You know, they first start off, you know, clashing with each other, obviously. But then after that, they you know, and the introduction of the Millennium Falcon, all that is nice and all. And you find out about Han and all that, and just why he is just a bit sadder, a bit more mean throughout these films, because you find out what happened to him and what Kira does to him, and you feel kind of bad for him, if anything, because you find that him and Chewbacca are just pretty much alone, especially Han himself, because it's his story at the end of the day, and you're meant to feel bad for him. And it's just a fun ride because it's basically just like a bounty hunter heist movie. So it's just a bit like Empire, where it just keeps going, and it's just a really fun time. What do I not like about it? I already said a couple of things I don't like about it, like Lando's performance. He's still decent, he's still okay, but he's not as good as Han. What else? I don't know, nothing else really. I think it's just a really good film. You know, I don't think it's as good as, I don't think it's as good to put it in S tier, but it's still really good for me. So I think for that reason, I'm going to go A tier. Yeah, A tier sounds good. Yeah, I think that's fair. Rise of Skywalker. Okay. Ugh. You know what, right? People put Last Jedi as the worst. I don't even want to, you know. That is the worst Star Wars movie for me. That movie actively upsets me. I was actually hyped for it as well. You know, everybody was saying before this film came out, oh, it's going to be Anakin. Anakin's going to come back. Anakin's going to come back. And I was like, yeah, maybe. And it didn't. I actually saw this film in cinema alone. I actually saw it on my own. And I'm glad I did, because if I was with a friend, oh, we would have been so upset together. But at least I could have been sharing my pain. I actually heard someone in the cinema say, oh, Star Wars is over, bro. I actually heard someone say that to their friend when I was in the cinema. Star Wars is over, bro. This was about, I'd say, halfway into the film, and I was not feeling it. I was just, every time I thought something was going to happen, nothing happened. And every time I would watch the film, or every 10 minutes, I was just thinking, can something happen, please? Can something happen? It started off pretty epic, you know, Palpatine coming back, Emperor Palpatine, Darth Sidious, whatever you want to call him. And he was fun, but it just didn't hit, man. I was so disappointed, you know, because it's just, nothing happened. One thing I do like is that Rey actually loses a fight. Or she just dies from exhaustion. Not loses a fight, she dies from exhaustion. Like, it was just too much for her to handle. I was like, okay, good. This might help her beat the, you know, the Mary Sue allegations and all that. But then I felt, oh, but if Kylo Ren dies, he's like the last Skywalker, so it's just kind of sad, because then that lineage is over then. It's just a really sucky ending, isn't it? Just for, you know, the Skywalkers in general, which I didn't like, you know? You know what should have happened, in my opinion? Rey dies. Actually, properly dies. She dies. And then he has to live with the guilt of her saving the day, right? And then he continues on with her teachings, or just the Jedi teachings, and he tries to redeem himself, as that's his new character arc, you know? Because him coming back, even that wasn't even that good, you know? Coming back to the light, I mean, Kylo Ren coming back to the light, which is something people actually like in the film. I didn't buy into it, you know? When Harrison Ford came back as Han in that film, in that scene, I was thinking, oh my god. And even at the time when I saw it, I was thinking, oh my god, they must have paid him money to come back. They must have paid him so much to come back. For that one scene, they must have paid him so much, man. So disappointing, bro. Just Ian McDiarmid and Harrison Ford just kind of like, bro, they could not live with their own failure. Where did that bring them back to us, man? But well, yeah, I just rated that because it just keeps upsetting me during the film because nothing was going on, and Finn and Poe just had nothing to do. You know, it felt like they had nothing to do in the film, and it was very disappointing. And it sucked. It was just sucking. Yeah, I don't even want to talk about the film. I'm just done. I'm done now. But okay, that's it. Hope you all enjoyed. These are all my thoughts on all Star Wars. I feel like I might, you know, if I saw this list again, I might change it up. If anything, I might, you know, as soon as I upload it, I'll probably think, oh, I'll change this, I'll change this. But you let me know what you think. Hope you all enjoyed. Make sure to like, subscribe, all that. I've been JBHD, and take care.